With person-centered care, we often think, how can we help this individual live their best life? But are we applying that same principle to our staff? Can our direct support professionals live their best work life at our agency? Hello, difference maker, and welcome to IDD Leader, the podcast that's all about helping IDD providers retain and grow their DSP workforce using behavioral science. I'm your host, Nate Beers, and today we're going to dive into the employee experience and how it makes a tremendous impact on DSP retention. If you can leverage the employee experience at your organization, you're going to maintain a high retention rate of your staff. And today's episode is particularly exciting because this is the very first episode of IDD Leader, which means if you're listening to this, then you can tell everyone else that you were there. You were one of the original listeners and the earliest subscribers, hopefully. And I guess that makes you a trendsetter. Awesome. Speaking of trend setting, does your agency place a high value on the employee experience? If your organization can get this right, you're really going to be a trendsetter because pretty soon all the best DSPs around are going to want to work at your agency. But I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We should start with this. What is the employee experience? It's kind of like the customer experience. Is it easy or hard to be an employee there? Are things set up to make DSPs' lives better or more difficult? And we'll keep going with that. But first, let me tell you a story. It's actually two stories. Years ago, I was moving my family clear across the country from Pennsylvania to California. Yes, in January. Were we in a big box moving truck? Yes. Did we have a dog with us? Yes. Glad you asked. Anyhow, about 500 miles into day one, the truck started breaking down. Like, bad things were happening. Some lights were starting to go off. So we barely managed to get to the nearest hotel. And when I called the rental company, they said they could deliver a new truck, movers the next day, and that then we'd have to actually drop off the mostly broken down truck to a nearby location and then resume our journey. And I'm sure you can imagine I was already really stressed out from the move. I mean, it was going well and everything, but moving is a lot of work. And then to have the truck break down on top of that, oh my goodness. I can just remember as I was sitting there at night recalculating our new projected timeframes for when we'd arrive in California and then trying to figure out if there'd be enough time to actually start the job on time or if I was going to have to call them, let them know I'd be late. Anyhow, eventually it all worked out. We got to California. But I remember being on the phone with the company for just extended periods of time fighting to get reimbursement for the unexpected hotel costs and other additional costs that were incurred. I had to send them every single receipt, and I never even got a discount for the truck rental rate, which is still boggles my mind to this day. Well, contrast that with more recently, I was driving an SUV rental across a higher elevation in Pennsylvania in December, and it was snowing. So the salty roads start kicking up the, slush and just the windshield's getting dirty. When I went to use the washer fluid, it was frozen. Like it was frozen in the tubes, which I knew what that was because it happened to me one time before when I was a new driver. You cannot put the summer-only washer fluid in a vehicle if you're going to be driving in the Northeast or anywhere where it gets cold because it'll just freeze in the tube and then it's useless. Well, apparently this company had let that happen. Maybe I don't know if the vehicle was somewhere warmer before it was in Pennsylvania, but they're renting it to me in December with washer fluid that freezes. Well, I had to pull over many times to wipe off the windshield and to be able to continue driving, and I felt so frustrated at that company. How could they do this? How could they let that happen? Eventually, I made it there. I dropped off the SUV, and when I walked in and returned it, as soon as I started explaining to the company representative what happened, he just started tripping over himself, apologizing, and seeing what he could do to make it right. And by the time that I walked out of there, I had gotten this gigantic discount on the rental. He was extremely apologetic, and it felt really genuine. It wasn't like it didn't feel forced. And so that I made note to check the wash fluid next time. But that's how that story ended. Well, if we look at these two stories, there's just a huge difference with the two companies. With the one company, they trusted me, right? The later one, they trusted me. They went out of their way, tried to make it right as quickly as possible. And they paid me it didn't really cost me extra, but they paid for the inconvenience and the emotional toll that it took. With the other company, I was fighting even just to get reimbursed for an unexpected hotel cost, and I got no discount on the rental. I mean, both times something went wrong, but the one company made a positive experience for me out of that negative experience, and the other one, it just stayed negative. This also kind of reminds me, if you have ever seen the show Undercover Boss, which I've rarely seen, I've seen a couple episodes, but it gives the CEO of these large companies, they get in the trenches undercover to see what it's like for their frontline employees. And it gives them the experience of their frontline employees. Usually the end of the episode is kind of a little touchy-feely here and there because they make a connection with somebody that works there that's, their frontline employee. And they usually the big boss kind of walks away with this thought of like, oh my goodness, I had no idea some of what these guys were putting up with. We need to change A and B and C to make this a better job experience for our frontline staff. Well, in all these different examples, it's really pointing to the same principle, which is the employee experience is crucial. It's crucial for staff retention. And IDD providers hopefully are not, as the leadership there, hopefully you're not as far removed as the CEOs in those huge companies. But it would go a long way for us to, as leaders, walk a mile in the shoes of those on the front lines. And when it comes to the employee experience, I would suggest that we think of the DSP as a customer and that the product is the job and that we're selling it every single day. Go ahead, just try to let that sink in for a second. Every day that you're hoping for your DSPs to show up to their job, well, and all the other staff, supervisors as well, you are really in reality hoping that they buy the product of the job from you for one more day. And so you want to make their employee experience so outstanding that they want to keep shopping from you. In other words, they want to keep showing up to work every day. And that the moment that you or any leaders lose sight of this and how important the employee experience is, that's the moment that employees are likely to start looking for other work. That's just how important it is. But let's get really practical with this. If I'm running a day program, then let's just say the attendance drops significantly for a day or for a week. Maybe it's because of some kind of storm or weather event. Maybe it's because it's right around the holidays, or maybe it's because the consumers just decided to all have vacations on the same week with their families. But one of the questions I would look at in that scenario is, as an agency, as a leader of the agency, am I furloughing staff with unpaid leave, or are we trying to make it work where they can count on their job is still there? If it's a full-time position, they can still show up to work and get paid for that day. Another example, as a new hire, of course, everybody's got their process in place for onboarding folks and getting them trained. But here's a question. Do I factor in the individual needs at all? Or am I just trying to get them through their computer trainings as fast as possible, kind of throw them into coverage as quick as possible because, man, we're hurting over here and we hope it's more than just warm bodies, but kind of fundamentally, just to keep ratios, we need some more bodies in here. Another thing I can ask myself is this. Let's suppose that we've just been really short-staffed lately and someone's supposed to have their shift end. We'll say it's a residential setting, but the coverage looks like they're falling through the cracks here. Like either the supervisor failed to schedule it or the person that scheduled had something come up. Here's my question. Who's going to pay the price for that issue? Are we going to just demand that the staff who was planning on leaving has to stay another hour or two or three until we figure it out? Or is somebody, a supervisor or a higher level manager, going to cover that, going to help solve that problem and take the burden on themselves? These are just some of the types of examples of where it gets practical. Of what kind of an employee experience are we making for our folks? Are we treating our employees as VIPs as well? We obviously want our employees, including our frontline staff, to be serving our individuals, our consumers. Those truly are our VIPs. But the best quality of care for those we're serving happens from employees who feel respected and honored and are having a good time and are having their basic needs work needs met. So those were a few avoid the bad examples. But the employee experience, when we understand this and we leverage this, we can not just avoid the bad, but we can also create a ton of positive value. Just think of it this way. Like if we're not just plugging holes in the boat, we can actually build something great together. So, for example, what would happen if let's just suppose I'm the IDD provider? What would happen if I decided, or if my agency decided that we're just going to be a little extravagant for everyone's birthdays, like every single staff person, we're just going to get a little extravagant? Like, how fun of a workplace would that be if we did that? And how much money does it cost to be thoughtful and to just go a little bit extra, a little above and beyond? I'm not talking about, you get a company pen on your birthday, or like a lame mug. Not saying that all mugs are lame, but I'm saying, what if we just went above and beyond and did some kind of a little celebratory thing, or we made it a big deal for the team? Or even our team huddles. Are we having team huddles at any point with our staff meetings, or with our leadership management team meetings? What's the vibe that we're giving off? Are we just sort of like, pushing hard? We're at the grinding it out day in, day out. Or are we really taking the moment to celebrate when people do something awesome, or to celebrate birthdays, work anniversaries? Again, not just with some token gift, but I mean with some pizzazz, some excitement. This is such an optional choice. No one's going to make us do this great. But when we do it great, it starts to create a culture where employees begin to feel valued. And again, we could go through the motions and we could check every box, and it's not going to have that effect. But when the leaders believe that, and they can start to impart that to the supervisors, and then they impart that to their staff, it really does start to make a positive difference. It's that, how can I help serve you? How can I help support you, DSP, to be successful in your job? How am I making this an amazing experience for them? And again, going back to that sales example, the DSP, they are a customer. They are a customer in the sense that they are choosing to work at your agency and not at someone else's. And I want my customers to be rewarded really well. And I think that's wisdom for everyone involved, to make it a winning experience for every employee as much as is within our power. Now, obviously, it's not going to work out for everybody, but for the vast majority, it really should, and it can. So let me give you one clear, actionable next step. Here it is. Identify one area where the employee experience at your organization is not what it could be, and then do something about it. Pick one thing that you have the power to change with whatever your leadership role in the agency is. And then here's the challenge. Set a half an hour on your calendar for this week, where all you're going to do is maybe sit at your desk or sit in your car or whatever. You're going to make a game plan with a deadline of how you're going to follow through to make that one aspect of employee experience better. Now, obviously, you might think of many, but just pick one to get that ball rolling. And then you'll start to see the results of that. And I'm telling you this, your future self and all the employees that are going to be positively impacted, they will thank you greatly for going from just hearing this idea on a podcast to actually putting it into action. Now, on a different note, I want to hear from you, difference maker. Let me know how the employee experience is going at your organization. I'd love for you to send your questions or leave comments so that I can hopefully share them or answer them on a future episode. All you need to do is just email me at nate@iddleader.com. And listen, if what I'm talking about is really clicking and you know that your agency could really use an employee experience audit, someone to come and give feedback on how you can improve the employee experience at your organization, then also feel free to contact me. Same email address, Nate, Nate, @iddleader.com. I'll reach back out to you. We can schedule a free 30-minute call to talk about how to make your employee experiences awesome for everyone involved. Well, that's all for today, folks. Until next time, here's to you, difference maker. Keep up the amazing work.